This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. Learn more at indiefilmhustle.tv. So many times I've seen filmmakers, and I'm guilty of this as well, and maybe you might have been guilty about this in your career as well at one point or another with a project, whereas you walk in with that analogy of the relationship, which is great. You walk in going, what can you do for me? So what can this movie do for me? It's all about me. Like, I don't care about the audience. Natural. I don't care about, like, what can this do for me, for my career, for what I'm doing? And I walked in a lot of times doing that. And I noticed that the projects I walked in doing that with generally didn't do what I wanted them to do. But the ones that I walked in being more of service, not only to the project, but to the audience that I was trying to serve, man, that opened up a whole lot more doors. Is that also fair?
No, I mean, completely. It's like, I still suffer from what you're talking about nowadays. Like, there's also like, this is where you have to have a long talk with yourself about what you're capable of, and the old Clint Eastwood line of a man's got to know his limitations, right? What you're capable of and what your ambitions are, and they're wrapped up in the id and ego and all that stuff, right? And then there's also the personal kind of inward ego, which is like, I just want to flex on this to tell myself I can do this. Like you said earlier, the Scorsese shot or the Fincher shot. Like, I just want to let myself know I can do this shit, right? And
right.
No, no, it's not gonna work out. But on every project, whether you're talking about the exterior thing, which is a bigger point, like if you're coming to something for the wrong reason, that's a massive thing, right? Then once you're in it, even if you're in it for the right reasons, right? Trying to impose your certain desires that have nothing to do with, and every single thing I've done has that in it. There are moments in every single movie or music video or short film where I've imposed something that shouldn't be in there. And so it's still a process for me of trying to work on that, the kind of selfishness in some of the stuff I do, or the self-consciousness of some of the trickery I'm involved in, right? And the style has changed because I've gotten older, which means I've become a little bit more conservative. And to use a boxing analogy, like, there's filmmakers out there who are just coming out with the right hand nonstop and uppercuts, and they're not setting you up with the jab. The jab is key to setting up a knockout. You're lulling your opponent to sleep. You're setting them up, and that's a light punch. It's not really meant for the knockout. And then you hit them with the right hand, or the right uppercut, or a right hook to the body, right? Those are your explosive filmmaking, storytelling moments, right? Whether they're visual, audio, or acting, right? If you just come out of the box, like there's some filmmakers you see, these big budget movies, they're just like right hand after right hand after right hand, and you're getting desensitized, and they're using 10 shots in 10 seconds when they can be using 1 or 2, and conserving their energy. The other analogy is, as you get older, we're talking about we're in the same generation. It's like you look at early Muhammad Ali, you look at early Michael Jordan, slam dunking, and float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. As they got older, they didn't work harder, they worked smarter, which is, okay, now I'm going to rope-a-dope you because I can't go around the ring as much, right? And I'm gonna use you against yourself, right? And then Jordan was more like, I can't slam like I used to, fadeaway jumper, same points, right? Just as effective. Kind of pretty, and filmmaking is the same thing. It's like when you're young and you're doing all that goofy shit, you're like, hey, it might be effective. Even our first movie, we did a lot of goofy shit, right? It might be effective and it worked, but you could do the same thing with more efficiency, and you know what I'm saying. It's just like
No,
I think that thing you brought up earlier, though, that it's like you do have to have some of that youthful ignorance.
A little bit.
I think that a little bit, but it can't go into that point you were talking about.
No, absolutely, and it's so true. And this is from two guys who are knocking on the door of 50 soon. That it's very different than 20-something guys. And you, from this point of view, this point in our lives, you look back, and now, like when I walk on set, before it was just like I had the energy, or I had the strength, or I had the force to do a lot of stuff, where now you just got to be like, you know what, man? If I do that, I'm going to burn myself out in 2 hours. I got to be much smarter about how I approach everything. And I'm actually doing that right now with a bunch of my projects that I'm working on right now. I'm like, I have a natural, like, hurricane wind force is why I do so much what I do with all my websites and companies and podcasts. And now I just gotta go, you know what, man, I can't keep this up, man. I gotta be smarter about this. I gotta let's do this and let's do that and build this over here and use systems and all that kind of stuff. And that's not what young filmmakers just like, it's like, it's like Tyson, Tyson at 21 and Tyson at what we just saw a few months in.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's also like when you're in your 20s, you know this too. It's like you can get by in 3 hours of sleep or 5 hours of sleep for months on end, right? And you show up and still do the job quite effectively, right? No, not no more. But one thing I did learn was the cancer that is video village and sitting in a chair.
Yes.
I learned my last movie. Before my last movie, I actually started doing this. Like, do not sit down. Do not camp near that monitor. Go stand next to the camera and have them bring a handheld to you and engage on every aspect of that frame or that performance or however you direct, right? If it means you're picking up a sandbag and putting it next to a dolly to stop it from rolling, if it means that you're moving something on the table, the more you hand over of yourself to that frame or that performance, and the more engaged you stay, you may be exhausted by the end of the day because you're standing too, right? But your mind plays a trick on yourself. It's telling you that you're in this kind of daze because you're not disengaged from the process now. You're not sitting back on a monitor. Yeah, you're definitely in a zone. And I realized in my last movie I was doing it, and I loved it. I really loved that. I was just up there like constantly active. Never went to my trailer too. Don't ever go to your trailer unless you have to pee, right? And these bad habits you pick up from our elders, like people that showed us the way. We're like, you see like a nice shot of Coppola or Scorsese at the monitor, nice big Italians, they've enjoyed their pasta and they're watching a performance and they're doing their thing behind the monitor. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be like that. No, well, that's some old school shit, man. Like,
no, you got to work. If you're going to study Coppola, study him on Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about Apocalypse Now. Yeah. That's how, like, he didn't stop. He was thin as hell in that movie. You could see him. He was like just.
He was in a bipolar episode the whole time.
And isn't it true though? Like because I do that too. Like I'm generally always walking, always moving. But the moment you sit down, the body shuts down. They're like, oh, I can rest now. I'm like, oh, I can't get up. But if you just keep going.
What? Yep. Because at our age, it's like an old car in the winter. Once you sit down, you get up, you start hearing all the cracking, and you got to rev your engine back up. Like you can't. I grew up in Detroit where you have to go out and scrape the window.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Shovel the driveway. Start the car a few times. Like you don't want to restart this old car. You got to keep it moving.
You got to keep momentum is built up by emotion. It's funny, and everyone listening is like, these are just two old fucks just talking.
Yeah. Young people can use it too. It's like, if you're 20 or 25 and you're hearing this, it's like engaging in the process by standing is a big deal. And not going to your trailer. There's like a lot of nuance about this, meaning that we were talking about the crew earlier. It's like the crew knowing you're there and you're not checked out in the trailer waiting to be called on set. Mm-hmm. Oh man, it does wonders. It's an unsaid thing. They're like, we got to get this moving. Basically, if it's just like, especially if there's not a DP who takes on the role of, this is why DPs have tremendous egos. I've noticed is that they basically are the.
Stop it. That's unheard of. What are you talking about?
I didn't know that. I didn't know that too late in my career. I'm like, oh my God, these motherfuckers have awesome egos. Like, Jesus Christ, where does this come from? It's the control. They were the controlling factor on the set when the director was in his trailer. And also they had the power of magic back when there was film. Like, people didn't know. They were like Houdini. Like, how do they do that?
Right.
It was a mystery. Now it's not a mystery anymore. You see that shit on the HD monitor. It's like, dude, the jig is up. You got your 2.8 stop. Give a fuck. Let's go. We'll correct that shit. Telecine.
We'll do that in color grading, man. Let's move it along.
I used Telecine. He was an old 90s reference. There you go.
Yeah, I remember. Oh, jeez, man. I'm actually I'm transferring some old 35 I shot back in the day now to 6K just to play around with it again. And it's all it's cross reverse. I shot it reversal stock.
Yeah, I love fucking with that back in the day.
Old school reversal stock. and then
Yeah.
did cross processing, like what Spike did and what Mick G did back in the day. That's where I was like Mick G back in those like Big Mouth music videos, not Big Mouth, Smash Mouth music videos,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they were like super colorful and all that stuff.
But Ektachrome, Kodachrome,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, yeah.
And there's something to be said.
I went through a fascinating stage on that.
Yeah, and there's something to be said still, man. Like, I don't want to get into the weeds with film, man, but film, you could do stuff in film that is still very difficult to do digitally. And it still has its place without question. But that instant gratification, man, it's like.
Well, I mean, like there's a debate, rage. This debate is pretty important, really. It's like, you have 5 of these big directors that swear by film. And I was one that was very, dogmatic in that too. I'll never leave film. And then Book of Eli was shot in the first red one because I did all these tests. And then I got to the point where, I love control of the image, and I also I also realized that I can emulate film. You'll never come up with that magical thing right out of the gate. You can emulate it, right? And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. And digital's getting to the point right now where if you really, really want to push it, you can get pros in the same room and they won't know the difference, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you really know what you're doing, okay? My thing is I don't want to wait overnight to see if we fucked up the exposure, And I don't want any of that bad stuff. Also, like, people forget that, you got guys like Christopher Nolan he's hardcore in this film thing. And it's like, dude, you're going to a DI anyways, even though he doesn't really do a DI. He actually just, it's going through that process to be, delivered digitally, basically, right? So it's already in a digital form, in the final outcome. And I went to go see, what was that war movie he did? Dunkirk,
right?
Yeah. And IMAX, at a proper IMAX theater, right? And the first 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's 2 stories, and the image is like long. And I'm like, it's pretty cool, whatever. Then I start seeing like this, what looks like to be a bird in the sky or a plane. And it was lint. It was hair in the gate and lint. It was sticking in there for 2 scenes. And then I saw a talking scene between Kenneth Branagh and somebody else. And his shot was blue in a close-up. His shot was pink. His shot was corrected, back and forth. All the color grading was going all over the place, right? Because this is a print. And the print is very unstable. And it depends on the light in the theater, how many showings are going on.
Sure.
If the power is being grabbed. If the theater owner is not, putting a lower wattage stuff in there. The bath that it went through at the particular time at the lab, it's such an unstable medium. And it's so archaic, too. It's like, even when I was in film school, we were talking about that earlier, I would go, this shit's over almost 120 years old, maybe more. We were literally using technology. Every other field that you're in, whether you're building a car or building a computer, has advanced.
Right.
Okay. For some reason, Hollywood is using this tool that came from 35 millimeter still film photography, right? Which a lot of people don't realize. And they turned it the other way or whatever they were doing. And we're still using it.
Right.
And we've not modernized it, right? And the control that comes with modernizing it. I've completely let go of film. I don't even have I don't even daydream about it. I don't have a nostalgia about it at all. I'm like, it's dead to me. I never want to go back, right? I like the when you talk about the finished product, I always add green and do stuff like that to give you I want to emulate film. And there's a few things that filmmakers should know that gets you to that. It's not just grain. It's the 24 frames. It's the stop you use, whether you're using shallow focus or dropping out the focus in the background, right? It's the shutter. There's 3 or 4 things that are going on that create that feeling of what the audience considers film, because the audience is not so caught up like we are.
Right.
The technicals of it. Like you look at like an episode of Handmaid's Tale, that's shot digitally. It's very filmic because they want it to look filmic, and their use of shallow focus is like incredible on that show. It's a depressing fucking show, but
I can't watch it anymore, brother. I can't. Like it's too. It was maybe now I'll go back to it, but I just like it's like it was a very difficult. Like we're going through enough stuff in our world right now. I can't go into it
just now. Okay.
Like we are living in a dystopian. world with the pandemic and politics and craziness. I don't need to go and watch TV about it, though it's amazing. But I got to a certain point in the series, I was like, I'll go back, but I can't do it right now.
You didn't finish it?
No, I stopped. I stopped basically when she escaped. Spoiler alert! When she escaped and she was like running around in that like news factory or whatever, the newspaper factory, and they got her again in the airplane. I'm like, I'm done. I can't go back. I can't go back.
Because you know what that speaks to, though. I love the show, but what it speaks to is something we said earlier. It's like, that really isn't satisfying the audience. To me, it isn't. It's satisfying critics and filmmaking people as far as technique they're using.
Sure.
It's a self-flagellating show. It's basically like you're just, there's no hope. Like you want some dubs, you want some wins, and she's not getting enough wins for me, to make me feel good about this whole thing. If I don't live in this dystopian society in this show, it's depressing that I have to sit through all this shit. Like, the stuff they're doing to women in there. It's a very depressing show.
It's a rough show. And look, I left Walking Dead because of it. Because the second that Negan showed up, and he just started, like, there was a whole season that there was no wins. There was just no wins.
Yeah,
the characters I loved were just getting killed and beaten, and there was just like that's not good drama. Like, you need to have you got to give them a shot. It's like when the bad guy is so overpowering that they're just they barely can get anything in. It's just like, well,
it's oppressive.
It's like,
oppressive. It's like there's some great films that are really oppressive, right? And make no doubt. But when we're talking about this thing, filmmaking and the audience, and the analogy of being in a relationship, it's like you got to give us some dubs. We got to feel good about this relationship.
Just a little bit.